Do you like Norse mythology, but not in the weird way? How about guns? How about DDR? Well, then you might like BPM, bullets per minute. It's a movement shooter roguelike that looks like somebody spilled coffee all over the textures, and part of whom's identity is a bitchin' rock soundtrack. So basically the person I aspire to be. It's pretty standard in a lot of ways, but it manages to do things quite differently at the same time. Firstly, there's the rhythm aspect. There's like a visual metronome on your reticle that also shows you when certain threats are coming. Most actions in the game have to be performed on either the beat or the half beat, except jumping and moving. The enemies claim to attack on the beat, but it doesn't really matter. None of this matters. More on that later. You start a map, explore it, find the boss, kill the boss, move to the next map, scrounging for coins and keys along the way to get gear and stats for your build. So you have 4 slots for gear: headwear slot, an armor slot, a gauntlet slot, and a boot slot. Boot slot was my nickname in high school. I will not be elaborating. Generally speaking, only one type of item for each slot can be equipped, and they all have different effects. Most of them are pretty significant. A lot of them synergize with each other pretty well. There's infinite ammo, double damage, one that lets you fly, one that makes it so you can leave your house without patting yourself down like you're auditioning for a job at the TSA. Wait. Things like that. There's also at least one item that doesn't take a slot but still permanently affects your run. It's the skeleton key, which does pretty much what you'd expect. Some of the gear doesn't seem very useful, but it's honestly kind of hard to tell because, and this is also true with the guns, none of them tell you anything about themselves at all, except for maybe how many bullets you have, and some of the guns don't even do that. The game tells you about itself like you guys matched on Tinder. The text for one item is pure goodness. That's it. That's the tweet. I had to go to the wiki to see that the item gives you +1 on your stats every time you complete a floor and like 25 extra HP. The wiki comes in handy a lot with this game. Speaking of weapons, there are 20 of them, or 21 I guess, but one of them is exclusive to one character. There's everything from pistols to double shot shotguns to energy cannons and ray guns. However, even the ray guns are hit scan or projectile, so there's no real rays involved. Sugar, Rachel, you're out. Some of them are pretty fun, and some of them kind of suck without the right build. There's like a rhythm to the reload mechanic also. Most of the guns have between 2 and 3 beats to reload, as in you have to click the reload button like on the beat. Some of them individually reload 1 round at a time as you click the button, which can be pretty tedious when you pick up a bunch of the item that gives you an extra round for your magazine. Some of them are pump action, that was my other nickname in high school, require an extra click between shots that doesn't actually fire a round. Some have a delay between when you click the fire button and when the round actually fires. Most of the guns have a pretty good heft to them, but the pump action is very distracting. There's like a boom, click, boom, click, boom, click, 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 boom, click situation going on that seems to pull my brain's attention away from what I'm going to shoot at. It makes it kind of hard to aim. Since there are always enemies everywhere, you'll also have to continuously jump and stomp around like my upstairs neighbor. He does it on purpose. He's just still salty that I pocket laugh reacted a post about his guinea pig dying. The aiming is kind of weird, but it works pretty well, I think. You have a big diamond with a dot in the middle of the reticle. And as long as you're in range and have an enemy within that diamond, the little dot will sort of snap to different parts of their body, I guess. Which is great, except enemies also have weak spots, and it's like almost impossible to intentionally aim at some of them because it doesn't seem to have any like priority over the non-weak spot areas. It's like trying to thread a needle with the tail of a very upset lizard. And there's a problem for a few reasons, chief among which is the enemy HP scaling, because holy shit. So you've also got stats, including speed, range, luck, damage, precision, and ability. The speed is how bad you gotta go fast, range being the distance from which you can hit enemies, mostly. If you aim a hit scan weapon, like something that shoots bullets, at an enemy that's out of your range, you'll get a little message saying too far. But if you have a projectile shooter like a rocket launcher, the projectile will continue indefinitely until it hits something. But if the target is like past your range, it won't target it. Luck is, let's just say it gives better loot, more or less. I'm gonna go on a bit of a rant here.
You're ugly, you are disgusting, I'm gonna kill you, give me $200.
I think the game considers chests that require a key and health potions to be like top tier loot, and this can be a problem when you're a gear gremlin like ya boy. You keep getting starved of potential gear because like every chest you open is a health potion or it needs a key. So the default keys that you get from beating mini bosses or the actual boss of the level run out pretty fast. More on this in a minute. Damage is how hard you hit. pretty simple. Precision is how well your little auto-aim reticle tracks enemies. And ability improves your active ability most of the time. For instance, one of them is a teleport, and it seems like your ability stat has 0 bearing on that. Though I don't know what it could possibly do. Maybe make you teleport harder, better, faster, stronger? I don't know. Rhythm is obviously important to maintain while you're playing the game, but the balance for what happens when you're offbeat is pretty well done, I think. It kills your combo counter, which only matters if you care about score, or if you have an item that gives you a bonus that scales with the combo counter. It can go up to 4 times, but it'll drop back to 0 if you shoot, reload, dodge, or use an ability offbeat. And also the action doesn't take place. Also if you get hit. Clearing a room while doing every action perfectly on beat and not getting hit will give you a flawless clear, giving you a slightly better chest, allegedly. The game mentions that if you shoot perfectly on beat, you do more damage, but it doesn't really let you shoot off beat, so I'm not sure if there's a slight damage modifier for how close you are to being on beat, or if it means like on the actual beat and not the half beat, because both are an option. There's also a helmet that gives you bonus damage to perfect rhythm, so again, very confusing mechanic to try and figure out. I have noticed that even on the wiki, some sort of mechanics are listed as like unverified because nobody can figure out what the fuck this game is talking about. Floors can also have a modifier, you know, to make things more spicy. There's Barren, where enemies don't drop anything and there are no chests. Bad. Skip this one. Bountiful, where you get better chests. Castle, where there's like a random challenge room of sorts in the middle of the map. Dark, which is Phasmophobia mode. Explosive, where enemies drop little skulls instead of coins or keys, and if you touch them, they explode and damage enemies. Another thing that is not explained at all, and made me very scared to touch the glowy skulls, because skulls are bad, and they're orange, which is also usually used to mean bad. Frozen, which is working at Checkers drive-thru simulator. You know, because you slide around. It's the Checkers, it's greasy. Come on. Glass, where everybody does double damage. Infested, you'll never be lonely with this modifier. Inverted, I've never seen this one, but it flips your screen upside down. I'll be skipping this one. Thanks. Midas, all enemies drop coins when you hit them rather than just when they die. Pitted, another unique room with a puzzle. It might be very rare, I've never seen it. Space, everything is floaty. I like this one. These sort of flesh out the way that most of the challenges are presented in this game. It's almost always a reductive or restrictive challenge, where the extra difficulty comes in you not having access to a certain mechanic or item. There are 10 playable characters, each one with their own unique properties, that make them essentially all into their own challenge run. For instance, one character can't pick up any weapons and only has the power of the Goblin King on his side. One character has a single hit, no way to gain HP or armor, just one hit and the run is over. But he can fly and starts with one of the better guns in the game, so that's cool. One character starts with completely random attributes, weapon, and one piece of gear. Sometimes it works out amazingly. Sometimes it works about as well as electrically stimulating your brain to unlock your latent telekinetic powers, which is to say, not at all, so far. And then there's one that's a cat. That's it. Just a little cat with a little gun. We gonna shoot you. Most of the enemies are bugs, it seems, or weird bug ladies that you're definitely not attracted to. There's some demons and witches in there for good measure too, and rocks, I think? They explode? Yeah. Most of them are pretty easy to deal with individually, but that's rarely the case. There's a lot of rooms, a lot of corners to get caught on if you're not paying attention, and you probably won't be paying attention. Most of them are pretty well designed, but none of them make any noise at all. Like, they have some sort of noises, but even with my fancy studio headphones on and cranked up loud enough to drown out the voices, most of the sound that the enemies make are weird grunts in time with the music, and they're barely audible as is. More than once I've been screwed out of a good run by a spider that had infinite time to sneak up behind me while I was shooting at a fucking bat I couldn't hit from 4 feet away with a shotgun. That brings me to some of the things I don't like about this game. And before I start, I want to make it known, if it wasn't obvious, I have a passion for these games greater than the passion that Tom McDonald fans have for spreading misinformation in local Facebook groups, and I love this title individually. I've been playing it all day trying to get the achievements, so this is not like a condemnation of the game. With that being said, there's kind of a lot that bothers me here. First off, like, what the fuck is going on with the RNG? One thing I've noticed, and I made sure it wasn't just my bias, because that's a problem with RNG. You sort of like really notice when it's not going your way, and you sort of discount all the times it does go your way. And also, it's not supposed to go your way every single time. That's kind of the point. But in this game, the RNG has a propensity to give you exactly what you don't need. And not only what you don't need, but specifically things your character can't use. So the chests that spawn when you beat a room either contain coins, keys, health, or a combination of them depending on how high quality the chest is. Sometimes you get really rare chests with a gun in them. So when I'm playing a character with no HP, so therefore no need for HP potions, I counted once and literally 8 out of the 10 rooms on the floor, the reward was You guessed it, an HP potion. That never happened to me when I was playing a character that could use an HP potion. Not once. Which is kind of a minor thing, to be sure, but it feels like a really hollow challenge when the game decides to just starve you of coins arbitrarily, because the coins sort of seem to be the default reward that you're supposed to get, and you kind of need them for gear and weapons, which are like the objective before you make it to the next stage, is to upgrade your gear to get to a build that you want to use. And getting bad gear or bad stats on gear or whatever is typical with any game that has RNG on it. I'm aware of that. But this game has the distinct problem of literally depriving you of all the gear on a floor altogether, which feels a lot like an artificial challenge to me. And speaking of artificial challenges, as you progress through the floors, you get different types of enemies that are stronger and they have more HP. That makes sense. Higher difficulty also scales up the damage that enemies do. Kind of lazy, but I get it, yeah. But it also scales up their HP by what seems like 100%. Can you tell where this intersection starts to suck a lot? For me, it was the fact that on higher difficulties, they spawn in the stronger enemies, like sometimes in the first room. So not only do they have the HP of an enemy that you would normally encounter towards the end of your run, when you would have a bunch of damage and gear, but they also have 2 times the health they would normally have because you're on a harder difficulty. You may be asking, but isn't that the point of a higher difficulty? And to that I say, who? Who are you asking? God?
God doesn't live here anymore.
Not after Hot Cheeto Mountain Dew. But it does lead to situations like this, where the gameplay sort of just devolves into you frantically hopping around and taking pot shots at really tanky flies, I think they are, which shoot projectiles at you, and are some of the most dangerous enemies in the game when there's more than 3 of them in a room. And there are always more than 3 of them in a room. There should be some sort of like triangle or hexagon graph where there's tanky, high damage, agile, and maybe hard to hit. Now what you shouldn't do is inflate that to where enemies hit every single intersection on that graph. That's f***ing annoying. It's not a satisfying challenge, it's just annoying. There's also some like performance issues, and minor though they may be, they've f***ed up more than a couple runs for me personally. Sometimes like the music hitches and the game sort of hitches, or just the music hitches, or sometimes your controls don't do anything for a second. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens like a lot more than I would like. The final gripe here I have is the color palette. I get what they're going for. It looks good. However, the way that they render everything, where it looks like they did some of the lighting effects in a way that a shadow is cast onto an enemy by like projecting the black of the shadow onto the enemy, and the parts of the ground that are in shadow seem to just be a flat shadow texture, which is obviously the most efficient way to do things. But you get situations like this bullshit where enemies will literally just be invisible unless you can see their glowing weak spot, if they have one. And for this game, I wanted to start a new segment for these videos where I go over like the community of each game and sort of overview it, because that's one of the things I really like about games is the community most of the time. We are talking about gamers here, and we all know how they can be. There's only 2 genders, man and political. But for this game, there really isn't a community to speak of. There's a wiki, which is well maintained, I think, and pretty up to date, and pretty comprehensive. There's a subreddit and a Steam forum, but they're all pretty dead, which is really a shame, because this game is a banger. I'd love to have seen the team continue to work on it, even sparsely, and sort of iron out some of the kinks, even if they didn't add content. And don't get me wrong, I'd love to see some more juicy content, but at the very least, some balance passes or optimizations, I guess. Now, don't get me wrong. I know it's a small team, and that they probably don't make enough money off of this game to justify continuing to work on it after they release it, and they want to move on. Perfectly justifiable. The game is absolutely serviceable in the state that it's in, and as consumers, we aren't owed anything more than we pay for, despite what everybody on every gaming forum will try to tell you. But this game could be so much more. I went to search for mods and discovered that there aren't any, which is very disappointing. I'd love to see something like custom soundtrack capabilities, color and texture mods, custom items or characters, stage randomizers, quality of life tweaks, hell, even some reshade presets, anything at all. The modders, if you're there, I'll make a deal with you. Make some mods and I'll cover them in my next video. If I could think of a less enticing offer for somebody to dedicate the time and effort to mod a game, I would make it. But that was literally the least appealing thing I could imagine. Well, if you did enjoy this video and want to see more, please do your part and like and subscribe. The goal is to get enough people to do that to feed my little gremlin. As you can see, she's emaciated, and we need food. Isn't that right, kitty? See?